This is Alabama football on YouTube. Breaking news now out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Crimson Tide have received a commitment from four-star out of Florence, Alabama, Jahlil Hurley. This is another big commitment early on in this 2023 class. Trey Annity here with Andrew Bone to break it down. Haven't had too many commitments quite yet in this class, but Alabama securing another big one in the secondary. What do we need to know about Jahlil Hurley? How big is this commitment for Alabama to get another one in the class of 2023?
Huge commitment for Alabama today with Jahlil Hurley, who's a borderline 5-star recruit. I mean, one of the top 35 overall players in the country. I think on most of the recruiting sites, including Rivals, right there, number 32 overall, number 3 overall player in the state of Alabama. I mean, this is a commitment that we have been expecting for a little while now. He was expected to commit last month. He was scheduled to commit on January the 22nd. Decided to push it back 1 month and decided to announce his commitment today after visiting Alabama late January for Junior Day. Had a great trip down there. We've seen Alabama shuffle up some of the coaches on the staff, including new defensive backs coach Travaris Robinson, who's now in Tuscaloosa, who actually recruited Jahlil Hurley to Miami when he was down there coaching the Hurricanes. So they've had that relationship going for a long time. But at the end of the day, it's all about Alabama and Coach Saban for Jahlil Hurley. This is a kid who grew up an Alabama fan, and obviously, his whole life, watching Alabama have tremendous amount of success, whether that's championships, Heisman Trophy winners, or first-round draft picks, especially at his position. And you see the guys in the NFL right now, the guys who are doing extremely well, whether that's Trevon Diggs or Marlon Humphrey, Minka Fitzpatrick. Just so many, Patrick Surtain Jr. So many star defensive backs that have come from Tuscaloosa now playing in the NFL. I think that's definitely something that he likes a lot. But obviously, growing up a fan of Nick Saban, and making sure he felt like a priority recruit from Alabama. I think that was another big thing because he had a lot of schools that were coming after him, and Alabama started recruiting him very early in the process. He camped in Alabama last summer, went to 3 or 4 games in Tuscaloosa during the fall, and then made it to Junior Day. Coach Saban, Freddie Roach, who was his area recruiter, also visited him in the month of January. So, certainly felt like a top priority target for the Crimson Tide for a long time. So a big commitment today for the Crimson Tide gives them 2 commitments, joining 4-star defensive back Elliott Washington out of Venice, Florida. So 2 big-time defensive back commitments already on board for the Tide.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's quite the thunderstorm going on, obviously, here in our Tuscaloosa studio in the background. But like you said, a big get for T-Rob. Freddie Roach, the rest of the staff as well. And you said a second defensive back commitment for this 2023 class. Do we see another one here soon, or are we going to see maybe a dry spell for defensive back commitments? And, how big is it for Alabama to get to really early on in this process?
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly a class where we expected Alabama to probably sign 5, maybe even 6 defensive backs. So getting 2 early on in the process, really good for Alabama. Obviously, there's several guys who are out there. I'm kind of interested to see if this might put a little bit of pressure on some guys to go ahead and jump on board. Not necessarily coming from Alabama, but different recruits seeing Alabama's already has 2 defensive back commitments, might as well go ahead and jump on board in case that spot might get taken. So I'm looking at somebody like Makari Vickers out of Tallahassee, one of the top defensive backs in the country, has Alabama right at the top of his list. We could see him potentially go ahead and make a decision. I don't see anything really happening right now with the other in-state guys like AJ Harris or Tony Mitchell. I think those guys are planning on waiting a while, taking some more visits, enjoying the process before we see them make a decision. But I certainly think that a guy like Makari Vickers, Janelle Aguero is another kid that we could see make a commitment potentially sometime soon. Does that mean it's commitment to Alabama? I'm not sure about that just yet, but we could see those guys make some decisions. So as far as the defensive backfield is concerned, still a lot of guys out there, still a lot of guys that they're heavily pursuing, heavily recruiting, including 5-star defensive back Carmani McClain is planning on making a trip to Tuscaloosa here in the next couple of weeks. So a lot of defensive backs still out there. And, with Travaris Robinson now being a part of the coaching staff, known as a great recruiter, are developing a lot of great relationships with top defensive backs throughout the country. And as you all know, Coach Saban, that Alabama coaching staff, everyone who's involved, they do such a great job recruiting guys, developing relationships, and then showing them the ropes once they make their way to Tuscaloosa. So we're going to see a lot of different recruits visit Alabama over the course of the next few months. Really March 5th when junior day happens. And then once spring practice kind of gets rolling, you're going to see a lot of kids kind of in and out. See kids come to spring game, and then we kind of get into the summer where kids start to take their official visits.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing, I think you really hit home there. This staff develops players and gets these guys to that level pretty quickly. And one thing they also do really well is recruit inside the state of Alabama. Of course, Shirley, coming from the northern side in Florence there, how big is it to continue to dominate the state of Alabama and get another big commitment early on here?
Well, as we've seen, is so many top in-state recruits have signed with Alabama, had a tremendous amount of success in Tuscaloosa, and this is probably one of the deepest, best years that we've seen in the state of Alabama in quite some time. I mean, it's certainly going to rival, that 2008 group. I mean, there's some other classes that were really good, but 2008, 2009 were, those were kind of the tone setters right there. And I certainly think that Alabama is going to have a really good chance to, have some great players. Obviously, you look at guys right now, and you got a lot of guys who are in the top 100, but how good are they going to be in the next 3 to 4 years? And obviously, the early projections are these guys are going to have a chance to be one of the greatest classes that we've seen in the state of Alabama in quite some time. I mean, it's really loaded on the defensive side of the ball, especially at the defensive back position and on the defensive front, on the defensive line. So I certainly think you go ahead and get one of those top 3 players in state already on board. He can help recruit a lot of those other guys that are going to be coming into Tuscaloosa for visits, for games, for spring practices, and summer camps and stuff like that. So having a big in-state commitment already on board, is certainly going to help Alabama, with several of the other guys. Now, we're never going to see really a recruit make a decision based on where where somebody's committed. I don't know if somebody's going to pick up the phone and say, "Oh, Jahlil Hurley's on board. I want to commit too." They're going to make their own decision at the end of the day. But with Jahlil Hurley being an elite player, elite players want to play with other elite players, and I certainly think that he's going to be talking and trying to recruit guys to Tuscaloosa to join him. And as we know, Alabama recruits the state of Alabama extremely well. Wins the state pretty much every single year. I don't think that's going to be any different this year. They're going to have a tremendous amount of success, and it's a good thing because, like we said, it's probably one of the best classes that we've seen in quite some time.
Oh, it certainly is. Hurley, it being in state here, I think helps too with some of the recruiting efforts, like you said, with some of these other guys around here. And just watching the tape, you tell how athletic he is. He plays on both sides of the football, mossing dudes on the offensive side and locking it down on the defensive side there. It's going to be, relatively young secondary when he gets to Tuscaloosa as well. Where do you see him kind of fitting into this group? How early could we see Jahlil Hurley get playing time with the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think one of the biggest things Alabama likes about him is his versatility, and we've seen that the last few recruiting classes. We've seen a lot of guys who have that ability to play cornerback, or they can play in the nickel or the star. They can play safety. I think he's a guy that most likely is going to start out his career at corner, but we could easily see him move around. I think that that's just something that Alabama really likes, but extremely athletic. You mentioned playing on both sides of football. He's also a star basketball player. So I think his athleticism really helps him. He's got great speed, great length. He's a long kid. He's 6'2", about 185 pounds right now. So just extremely has extremely good size, and definitely somebody that if he can play that cornerback position, Alabama would love to use him there because they love those tall 6'1", 6'2" corners in their system.
Yeah, they certainly do. Going to be great to have some depth there at that position as well when he gets to the program. We talk about Jahlil Hurley, these secondaries. Class in general, what is next for Alabama? I know you said March 5th is going to be really our next big date to look out for, but who are some other targets that we could see maybe making their commitment in the rest of February or, into early March there?
Yeah. As of right now, there's no other set commitments for the month of February, so we'll see. I mean, so usually you don't really see a lot of commitments this time of the year. It's kind of the dead it's called the dead period, but it really is, takes that name because there's just, hardly anything that goes on there in recruiting, especially during the month of February after signing day. It's pretty quiet. Coaches take vacations and stuff like that. But once we kind of get into March, things kind of kick back up a notch, and once kids start visiting campuses and stuff like that. I mentioned, we might see a couple of defensive backs go ahead and make decisions here in the next, couple weeks, with this commitment today. I'm really intrigued to see what happens with Raquiz McElderry, the offensive lineman out of Anniston, after the news of Matt Luke deciding to step away from football, leaving the Georgia Bulldogs at the offensive line position. I certainly think that that opens up the door for Alabama to really make a move with Raquiz McElderry in terms of flipping him away from that commitment. So we'll see if something happens there in the next few weeks. Not in terms of flipping, but potentially in terms of reopening his recruitment. Obviously, we're going to wait and see, who all decides to come in March for that second junior day, first one in March here in the next couple weeks, and things are going to be extremely busy, extremely exciting, and you can easily see some guys decide to commit, but as we've seen the last couple of years, that things just tend to start out really slow in the month of February, March, and April, and then when things really start to pick up May and June as far as commitments, are concerned. So we'll kind of have to wait and see how that all plays out. But I think Alabama's, in a much better position when, as of right now than maybe they were last year, because you had the COVID year. You didn't get a chance to have junior days or go out and see kids, during the month of January, all that stuff. Now back in play for every school throughout the country, so that kind of puts Alabama in a better position in terms of giving a kid a green light to go ahead and make a decision. Whereas last year, you didn't see anybody until June, maybe for the first time ever. So they decided to wait on a lot of kids. Now they've seen a lot of players, so you may see more commitments happen because of it.
Yeah, Alabama definitely off to a great start here in the commitment department, especially with this secondary. Guys, before we get out of here, hit that like button for me. Get in the comments section of this video. We typically do a weekly recruiting show. This is going to kind of substitute for the week, so we want to know your thoughts on all things recruiting. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Bone, before we get out of here, your final thoughts on Jahlil Hurley, another big commitment for Alabama in this 2023 class.
Well, just like I said, a big commitment for the Crimson Tide. I mean, we've been kind of expecting a big in-state commitment to happen for a while, whether that was Jahlil Hurley or Peter Woods or maybe somebody else. I mean, I think everyone's just kind of waiting to see what Peter Woods is going to do in terms of when he's going to announce. But obviously, this is a good step in the right direction, a big step in the right direction for Alabama, getting that first in-state commitment. And, not only just it being an in-state commitment, but somebody at a position of need and somebody that's, a big-time player, number 32 overall player in the country, and Jahlil Hurley.
Big-time player, no doubt about it. Jahlil Hurley, 4-star out of Florence, Alabama. Bone, thanks for getting on here to break it down, guys. Like I said, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to join you tomorrow night for our Alabama Wraparound show. But until then, have a great week, guys. Roll Tide.